Hello everyone, this is Professor Hasselman with History 105 Online. In today's lecture we're going to be talking about industrialization and capitalism. So let's begin the presentation here. So if we take a look at what we're looking at here, we're going to be looking at industrialization and capitalism, but we're going to start with capitalism from the point of view of an author by the name of her name is Joyce Appleby, and the work that we'll be talking about here is The Relentless Revolution, A History of Capitalism. And one of the things we talk about in world history and Western civilization, U.S. history, is this idea of capitalism. So we're going to talk a little bit about why did capitalism arise in the first place. Well, as the bullet points say right here, one of the reasons why capitalism arose was because industrialization began with the simple application of steam and electricity. Now, this may not seem like a very advanced theory, but if you think about it, men and women were tinkering, that's why we have this term tinkerers, with this idea of what can we do with this new power of steam that we've developed, which we'll talk about later on in another lecture. And one of the things they decided to do is they were just playing around with the different things they were inventing and applying it in different ways, both steam and electricity. So this is one reason why capitalism was able to rise. As I mentioned, these were already known and studied phenomena. Obviously, steam and electricity are natural phenomena. But the tinkerers of the industrial age found a way to efficiently harness their power. And also, traditional societies were based on scarcity. If you control the grain production, you can prevent inflation, starvation, etc. And it was during capitalism that we learned a better way, more efficient way to maintain these systems. And also during this time period, farming evolved into an industry. It used to be just to sustain individuals. Now we're turning it into the industry of farming. So what is capitalism and what is capital? Well, capital is money destined for a particular use. And these are all terms that you might take in a economics 101 class, but this is just the basic things we need to keep in mind here. So capital is money destined for a particular use. It's money, but it becomes capital once you use it for something. And then money becomes capital once it's invested. And this is a very important aspect of capitalism. It's not only earning as much money as you can and becoming rich, but finding efficient ways to invest this into your community or into property to earn more from your capitalist endeavors. So this is what capitalism is, according to Joyce Appleby's and as well Joyce Appleby in her book The Relentless Revolution, as well as just economics courses in general. Now, one of the things that we'll come across in our reading here is that capitalism arose in Great Britain and thrived in Europe. So why not in other parts of the world? Why not the Chinese or the Arabs or the Jews that had huge commercial systems as well? But one of the reasons was that Europe had a fully developed commercial system. There's also the argument of English exceptionalism. There was something going on in Great Britain that really pushed capitalism into the European scene. A sequence of events began in England and never ceased. There were no major disruptions in the evolution of capitalism. England had one major civil war in the 17th century, excuse me, but ended rather abruptly. It only lasted for a couple of decades, and the capitalist revolution that happened in Europe and in England happened after that, and there were no disruptions in capitalism since then. So the next thing we're going to be looking at, as that next slide shows, we're going to look a little bit at the a historiographical look at the development of capitalism, and we're going to talk about capitalism through the lens and through the works of three major economics or social scientists, economic and social scientists. The first we're going to be dealing with is Adam Smith. So in 1776, Adam Smith published his work, The Wealth of Nations. He placed economic development in a long sequence of progressive steps that had evolved over time. According to Adam Smith, capitalism emerged naturally from the universal tendency of men and women to truck and barter. So men and women naturally want to move their products around and trade them with each other. According to Smith, economic change had led to a slow, steady accumulation of wealth that would pay for improvements like the division of labor that enhanced productivity. And Smith made everyone a capitalist driven to seek self-improvement through the material rewards of the market. So according to Adam Smith, this idea of capitalism and even competition is a natural part of who human beings are, and it just becomes a natural next step for us to become capitalists. Now, in the 19th century, this view of capitalism, which continued all the way until the works of Adam Smith continued all the way until the 20th century when Scott Maynard Keyes reintroduced the idea of governments helping with the economy. Adam Smith was more letting the economy run its own. His big terms that he used was laissez-faire, kind of let it be, let the government stay out and let the economics kind of control itself. And this continued all the way into the 20th century, obviously, until the Great Depression, the worldwide Great Depression, that we needed some type of stimulus to keep things going. But going back to our historiographical approach, our next philosopher, if you will, or economist or social scientist, was a gentleman by the name of Karl Marx. And Karl Marx wrote a couple works, Das Kapital, written in 1867, and the Communist Manifesto, written in 1848. So Marx argued that industrialization occurred at a much more wrenching pace than the slow evolution that occurred in Great Britain. So instead of the slow, gradual approach that Adam Smith talks about, Karl Marx says no, it was a very rapid, ground-shaking event that disrupted everything. Karl Marx argues that factory work changed the tenant-farmer-landlord relationship, with the landlord benefiting more because he didn't have to pay the worker as much. And they were doing work using machines rather than actual physical labor. So we start to get a growing gap between the managers, the ones that are running the show, and the people that are working in the show. And we start to get a new class developing, according to Karl Marx, called the working class. Marx basically said that industrialization is not natural. It was just something that happened all of a sudden, and capitalism is not natural. And in essence, human beings want to work together and not compete with one another. And so this is later on developed into the theory of socialism, which is very important to the history of capitalism. Now, our final philosopher or historian or social scientist, I should say, was a gentleman by the name of Max Weber, who wrote a work called The Protestant Work Ethic in the Spirit of Capitalism in 1905. And according to Max Weber, he says, a man does not by nature wish to earn more and more money, but simply to live as he is accustomed to live and to earn as much as is necessary for that purpose. So kind of a mixture of Karl Marx and Adam Smith, that yes, we like being comfortable, but we're not, and having stuff as our own, but we're not in constant competition with one another, according to Max Weber. We're not trying, it's not natural for us to earn more and more and more money. Now, the convergence of an economically advanced countries and the Protestant Reformation was a really big thing for Max Weber when he wrote. He argues in his work, which is a very interesting piece of work, that the reason why certain capitalist societies are capitalist societies is because they have a Protestant ethic that goes back to the Protestant Reformation. So countries like Great Britain, which had its Protestant Reformation, Germany, parts of France, these are in the Netherlands. These are all Protestant countries, even to this day. There's a mixture of other religions. And then the countries like Italy and Spain and France, the majority of France, are not as advanced as the capitalist countries because of their Catholicism. Whether or not this is a fact or not, but Max Weber was a sociologist, and he was looking at religion as a way to answer. Max Weber rejected the existence of Smith's natural propensity to truck and barter, and even criticized Marx for assuming the existence of a market mentality before there was a capitalist market. Weber labeled Smith's ceaseless economic striving a peculiar form of behaving that had to be explained, not taken for granted. So these are some of the things that the historiography brings to the the main events here. And these are some of the things that you'll be reading about as you continue your investigation of industrialization and capitalism in the 19th centuries.